I'll be taking you through the prison to talk about this place, to give you an idea of how life was like here, to try as much as possible to talk on some of the dynamics of this environment. There are quite a lot of dynamics that we had to deal with here. There was an obvious dynamic of the political prisoners themselves and the prison system itself. That's an obvious dynamic. But then there was a dynamic amongst the prisoners themselves. Remember, we did not come from the same political organization. We here belonging to different political organizations that had different ideas on how to fight against apartheid, and those differences showed themselves here when we were responding to some of the challenges we're facing within the prison. There was also a dynamic of age differences. I came here in 1977 to do 5 years as part of a group of high school students arrested during the 1976 student uprising. So when my generation began arriving here, tensions developed between that generation and the generation who had come in the 60s about how to respond to the challenges that we're facing in prison. What added to that dynamic was the fact that the majority of the prisoners of my generation were either members or influenced by what was called the Black Consciousness Movement, which was the only legal organization in the country at that time against apartheid. So there was that dynamic as well. So hopefully, as we go through here, you will feel free to ask me questions at any time, because in that way I will be able to talk to some of your expectations about this place. Right now we are going to go into the front door. That's a door that everybody used. Everybody got off the boat just as you did. And you did exactly what would have happened with the prisoners. You didn't come by bus to the prison. You had to walk your way to the prison. But you walked your way to the prison rather in a very free way. Otherwise, you had to stand in a particular formation. Once you got off the boat, stand 2 in a row, and then you had to walk up to the prison accompanied by prison warders. There would be a warder in front leading you. If you are a big group as you were, there would be 2 warders on the sides and then another warder at the back patrolling you, bringing you here. Once they arrived, the doors of course would be closed and locked. He would knock there using that knocker that you see there, and after a few seconds you would see an eye peeping through this hole. Peeping through this hole. That would be the eye of the warder who is in control of the keys in this area, to check who is knocking, whether that person should be allowed to come in, whether there should be any proof of identification required before he opens the doors for you. And once he's happy, the door gets opened, and then you are ushered in. That would be the beginning of your life. When we came here, my group, there were 31 of us. We were arrested being a group of 43 in a meeting as high school students in 1976, where we were planning yet another student protest march, which was aimed at securing the release of fellow students who had been detained in previous protest marches. We were subsequently charged for a conspiracy to commit terroristic acts and sabotage. Group of 43, 31 of us sentenced to 5 years. The other 12, 10 of them 10 state witnesses, and 2 others acquitted. So when we came here, we had no experience of prison life. If I can tell you today, when I look back on that day, when I arrived here, we were sentenced on a Friday, the 21st of January 1977. On the 22nd, on Saturday in the morning, were walking from the harbor, coming into the prison. Coming from the Eastern Cape, which is about 800 kilometers from Cape Town, we had traveled the whole night. So we were walking to this prison. If you were to ask me today, what do I remember of that day? As I walk from the harbor, coming here, there's not much that I can tell you. I cannot remember this landscape. When I go back on that day and I try to see what was I seeing, I don't remember what I saw. Because I was so anxious, so overwhelmed, going into prison for the first time in my life, never having been in prison, and thinking, how am I going to cope with this 5-year period? I couldn't even imagine my life 5 years later. My mind was on today, minute by minute. And the biggest worry that we had amongst ourselves, when we were in detention and later when we were on awaiting trial, we were kept in prisons occupied by common law prisoners generally. And we had seen how they operate. What actually saved us was the fact that we were quite a big group, so they didn't mess with us. Prisoners in South Africa operate as gangs, and if you don't belong to any of those gangs, you are in serious trouble, especially if you are a young person. We were teenagers, so we could have been easy victims, but because we're that big group, they didn't mess with us. Now coming to prison, we knew that there was a possibility that we might be separated, and when you are separated, that security is gone. The question is, how are you going to survive? We didn't even know the history of this prison. We knew that the older generation of prisoners who were arrested for political offenses were in this prison. But as to whether there were also criminals here, we had no idea. Because there was not much of what was happening in this prison that we knew about. Many people who were released having been arrested in the 60s. I had an uncle actually who was here in the 60s. When I was arrested, he was already outside there. But he never talked about this prison. Even when people asked him about it, he would just shake his head and laugh and he would walk away, you know. So we didn't know whether there were criminals here. How did they treat the other prisoners? So that anxiety was real. So when this door opened, you knew that whatever happens here is going to determine your life for the rest of your life. It's coming.